Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the LaunchPad Associate Workshop Series. This afternoon, we have William O'Farrell going to be taking us through the teaching and coaching module. William is a graduate of the Golf Academy in San Diego. He's also an instructor at Golf Tech out of San Diego as well. William, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon on the LaunchPad. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, John?
Very good. Very good.
Okay,
It's all yours. You want to take us through your PowerPoint? And for all the attendees on today's LaunchPad on the live webcast, feel free. We try to make this as interactive as possible, especially when it comes to teaching and coaching.
Yes.
Our ability to be comfortable with our philosophy and methodology is paramount to how good of an instructor we ultimately become. So don't be shy. Come off a mute. Feel free to interject with questions or comments. And let's get the discussion going. William, thank you very much for taking us through the module, and welcome to the LaunchPad.
Awesome. All right, guys. So thanks, for everybody who's attending today. This is the first opportunity I've had to, that I've been asked to do this. So it's kind of exciting for me. It's different from my everyday job of just having people in and out of, our center here. So yeah. All right. Well, as we dive into the presentation here, we're going to pass to this first slide, which is the course objectives of the module itself. Lesson 1 is going to be introduction to the full swing, which we'll talk about the laws, principles, and the preferences that are involved in a player's swing. So really, we use those 3 things to kind of plan how and why we're going to change somebody's golf swing. Lesson 2 is going to evolve more around the short game, where we're going to talk more about what type of skills a player is going to need to improve those particular areas. So if we're looking at putting, we may talk about distance control or direction or reading greens, things like that. What consists of a basic pitch shot or a basic chip shot or a bunker shot. And while there's no, perfect idea or no perfect way to hit a golf ball for everybody, there's some different things that we can do to help a player really kind of normalize it for them and make it more efficient for those particular players. So our job as a teacher is to really kind of help a player find what works best through them. And that comes a lot from trial and error, and it also comes from developing as a coach as well too. So lesson 3 is going to talk more about defining the golf club performance. So the 14 characteristics of the golf club that will affect the golf swing and the ball flight. Lesson number 4 is going to be developing equipment expertise, which is a big area of mine. I love to talk about golf clubs and how they change from year to year, what the manufacturers are doing to try and help people play better golf. So golf clubs are a big hit for me. And then the last lesson, lesson 5, integrating golf club teaching and knowledge, which again we're going to talk a little bit more about equipment and how that actually will be integrated with technology throughout these lessons. So, as I'm going through these slides, guys, I'm probably going to ask you, to unmute so we can make this less of me, reading slides, which will change here in a minute. But I want this to be more interactive so we can all kind of learn from each other. So we'll go to the next one. So a law is a phenomenon of nature that has been proven to invariably occur when certain conditions exist or are met. In the model, the 6 laws determine the flight of the ball in a predictable way. A principle is a first cause or force of a higher order that directly relates to a law. In the model, which we're talking here about the golf swing, the 14 principles are the key swing positions and movements that influence the application of the laws. A preference is a choice of a particular approach method, style, device over other options. In this model, the preferences must relate to a principle. So we're going to talk about how all of these, the three things here, a law, a principle, and a preference actually relate. And we'll kind of give you some ideas so that when you guys are actually doing the activities, you should have a very good idea of how to do an effective lesson, right? And as you're observing the lessons, you want to try and start to see if you can pick out basically what law the teacher is working with, the principal, and how he's actually directing it through whatever preference he is using at that time. So we'll start off with the laws here. So centeredness of contact and impact, that's the first one. I would say that for me and my teaching here, that's probably one of the ones we actually use the most. We're really just looking to get the strike in the center of the face. So many golfers struggle trying to hit a ball. And when they get the best results, when they're happiest, they're hitting it the closest to the center of the face. So when we're looking at this law here, we're really trying to figure out, are they hitting in the toe? Are they hitting in the heel of the club? Maybe are they hitting a little high on the face or even a little low on the face? We're really just kind of looking at those variables, and we can kind of get an idea of, if we're looking to change that, we'll basically use that law, and then we can filter down through the principle or the preference at that point. The second one is the club face angle. And so with the club face angle here, we're really kind of determining it. Is it maybe more closed, which could be pointed to the left of the target, or is it more open, which may be more pointed right? Club face angle here, we're really just kind of looking at more left or right or closed or open, depending on what your preference of term is there. We're not looking at loft, because loft is actually down further. So the third one, which is going to be the club face path. And so that's actually the path that the club is traveling on. Some people, most golfers who are in the higher handicap bracket are going to be swinging a lot steeper, or maybe, we might reference that as over the top or out to in. There's lots of different terms that are out there for that type of steeper, more outside path, or maybe is the golfer swinging very shallow or in to out, or more to the right. Those are all, words that we're going to associate with club path at impact. The next law going down the list here, club head speed. So here we're measuring, exactly what it says. How fast is, the club moving at impact? We're looking to see that speed, and that's another, key law in terms of hitting a solid golf shot. So angle of approach. Angle of approach is going to be measured, easiest, basically how the club is moving down through the hitting area. So for me, I kind of classify the hitting area as somewhere around the knee height. Is it coming in really steep on the golf ball, or maybe it's coming in very shallow? Again, those are words that we can also use that would correlate well with path as well. Next one is dynamic loft. Now, here's where I'll probably ask my first question. I'm going to ask, does anybody know the term or the variables that would be dynamic loft? Can somebody unmute and answer that? No?
Hey, William.
Yes.
Hey, William. This is Tom. I don't. I'm not answering your question about dynamic loft. So
Sure.
I mean, I do understand it, and I know
Sure.
that the loft of a 40-degree wedge down, going whatever. But anyway, my question is.
Yep.
I'm old.
Yep.
I grew up with 9, the 9 laws.
Sure.
You have the 6.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you know that, can you, explain those to me? But I don't want to, take too much time.
Well, yeah, and really basically what they've done is, and I'll show you here too as well, Tom. They've I learned the old 9 laws a while ago, but I don't know exactly which ones they've combined, but a lot of the 9 laws that we used to use in teaching have been combined into one key item. And dynamic loft is actually a great example of that. So when we're looking at dynamic loft is the actual loft of the club when you're hitting. And like you said, a pitching wedge, which, an old style loft could be 48 degrees, right? Or 45 degrees. And depending if the player is actually de-lofting that club or maybe adding a little bit of loft, that's basically what we're looking at with dynamic loft. So it's a combination of the angle of approach at which the club head's coming in at, as well as the actual loft of the club while it's in motion. Does that answer your question? I guess
Perfect.
as best as I can.
Yeah, perfect, buddy. Thanks.
Awesome, of course. All right, guys, so we'll move on here to the next slide here, which we're going to talk a lot more about the principles. So when we're looking at principles, there's 14 of them. There's a lot of different things we can talk about here, and I'm not going to go through each individual one, because I think we could make an hour presentation about this. So we'll talk about some of the ones that I hit on. If you guys have any questions or you don't understand the terminology with some of them, you can definitely unmute and ask me. I'm happy to answer those for you guys. First one is setup, and you'll see that setup is basically almost as long as all the other ones, right? There's so many different things we can look at in the setup. For instance, the grip. Is the grip more strong? Is the grip more weak? Aim. Are they aiming, on the target? Are they aiming slightly to the left of the target? Are they aiming more right of the target? Posture down the line. So for those who aren't teachers in the room, down the line is going to be basically that camera view that you would look from the side of your body that's facing towards the target. And that's why we call that one down the line. Where posture, the second one there, face on, we're going to be looking directly in front of you to see what your posture would look like in that camera view. And I actually have some still frames further on in the presentation that will definitely help you guys with that. So but in reference here to the principles where we're talking about posture down the line, you might find that somebody's really bent over, and that might be easy to see, or they might be very upright at that point, right? And how does that affect the ball flight? Because really, as you're changing, or as you're starting to find the law that you're going to work with, and you're starting to look at what principle is going to fall under, you kind of have to have a plan. Why are we going to do this? The golfer who's there in front of you as you're trying to instruct them is really there because they need help with their game, and they're feeling bad about how they're hitting the ball, and they want you to help figure out why that is. So as you're planning these lessons or looking at their swing, when we're talking about posture, maybe they're too upright and they start to top the ball, or maybe they're really forward bent and they're crouched over and they're hitting the ground, right? So those are some of the things we can start to look at. Ball position. So when we're looking at ball position, maybe the ball position for a particular player is a lot more a lot closer to the center, or maybe the ball position is a little bit more forward. And for me, I have an idea that I would say for most golfers that I teach are kind of in that mid handicap range. So I try and keep their ball position slightly forward of center, and with their irons, maybe slightly just ahead of that center, with the driver closer to that left foot. right? And that's something that works for me. So when I'm teaching them, I want them to try and find the low point of their golf swing in a similar position. And when golfers change ball position all over the place, for some people, they may not have the motor pattern skills to change all of those different ball positions. So, you know, for me, I like to try and control the variables and have that one spot and have them, work on that. And as they're maybe looking to hit a shot slightly higher or slightly lower, we might find that, the ball position changes for that player. Distance to the ball is kind of the same thing, in the sense that, if you're too far away, sometimes players will start to reach at it. If they're too close, they might find that, they don't turn as well because their hands are getting too close to their body. So weight distribution, is their weight more on their left foot, on their right foot? Is it more in the toes or in the heels? And how does that affect the golf swing? Well, some people who put their weight more on their toes as they come down, they may start to lose their balance and swing, on a path that is more over the top or outside at that point, right? Or if it's on their heels, maybe they have a hard time finishing their golf swing because they don't get through the ball as well. So these are all different, parts of the principles that we want to have have an understanding of how they work before we even start to look at a golf swing, because we want to know what we're working with before we get in there. Muscular tension is a big one. I mean, for me working at Golf Tech, when we're taking a lot of still frames and a lot of video, for some people who it's very defined, where you can actually see their muscles starting to tighten up. Sometimes for some people that might be harder to see in a camera lens, right? And you kind of have to almost even sometimes listen to their breathing. Sometimes if they're breathing really, really deep, or you can tell they're holding their breath before they hit the ball, then their muscles are going to be tighter. And it's going to be a lot harder to make a good golf swing at that point. Any questions so far, guys? Good.
Yeah. Hey, William, in terms of your experience at Golf Tech, obviously you see a variety of students that come through there,
Sure.
many of which are probably beginners.
Yep.
Of all of the principles, which one do you find in your travels to be the most relevant and the one that produces the most positive results?
That is a great question. Looking at all of these, I would say that ranging from beginners all the way through to actually really good single-digit golfers, some of the things that we're finding here, or that I see a lot, with whether they're a newer golfer, like I said, or they're really, really good low handicap, most golfers that come in have basically a hip sway problem where they move their swing center. So swing center is going to be located on number 8. Basically, they kind of shift their hips back and then they rock them forward. And it's not like, a little shift. What we would be looking at here in this case is where their left pocket would start to, move outside of that right foot. So at that point, it really becomes a timing move to get back to the golf ball. So typically what we see as they get better is, we try and teach them how to turn better rather than sway more away from the target. And they start hitting the ball a lot better. And like I said, I mean, that ranges anywhere from a brand new golfer all the way up to really good golfers.
So as many of us know, the Golf Tech model is really based on, sticking to the process and getting the student to understand that their practice and their dedication and their regiment is part and parcel of how well they're going to develop and how much better they're going to get. Do you find in this fast food culture that we kind of live in, when you know that your students aren't willing to put in that time or effort, do you find yourself taking shortcuts just in that moment to get them the instant results, knowing that they're not really committed to the process. Do you see a lot of that?
Sure. That's a great question. I'd be lying to you if I said that I haven't done it, especially, early on. So I've been here for about 8 years now and taught like $15,000 or 15,000 lessons, right? So there's a ton of them in there. I would say that for the most part now, I have kind of shifted from accepting the fact that, I'd be giving them kind of that quick fix, like you said, to maybe trying to guide them to understanding, like, hey, you might not want to take a year's worth of lessons or 6 months worth of lessons, but in 5 lessons, this is what we can expect out of those lessons. We're going to work on your contact a little bit. We're going to get you turning a little bit better, and that's going to get you hitting the ball a lot more consistently. And how you talked about that, the short game problems you were having, we can address those within the 5 lessons. So I try and, I would say more so now, rather than say, okay, yeah, we'll spend 3 or 4 lessons just trying to quick fix you on your driver, trying to get them something a little bit more productive than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anybody else have questions at this point? I can continue on. No. Okay. So, going down the list here, guys, like I said, swing plane is going to be considered where we're swinging more over the top or maybe more inside. And I can show you guys pictures further on as we go through this. Arc width is basically the separation between your arms and your body as you bring the club back. We want to try and keep a nice wide, tall circle. In a perfect world, especially for us shorter guys out there, that's going to be an easy way to create a lot of distance and a lot of consistency that way. Arc length is measuring the length of the swing. Lever system, we're going to be looking at different levers throughout the golf swing, but one of the primary ones is the lever between the shaft, the wrist, and the arm, basically how that affects power, and distance, which it does, and that's a big one out there. Release, how fast are the hands moving through impact? Are they, do they hold them off more like Dustin Johnson or Jordan Spieth, or do they really start to roll them a lot faster? Kind of like a Ricky Fowler type of player. So dynamic balance, we're just measuring how well you're staying in posture throughout the golf swing. I would say that's an easy way to put it. Swing center, like I said, is talking more about how well are we actually keeping our spine angle throughout the golf swing. If our hips start to move all around, then it's going to be hard, very hard to stay centered as we're hitting the golf ball. Clubhead leg is also kind of an addition to the lever system. The stronger lever that we have between the shaft and the arm, the more clubhead leg we're going to produce, which is going to help us hit the ball further. So the next ones here, we might as well just finish them up. Connection, the connection between the upper and the lower body is an easy way to look at that. We can start to have a good sense of maybe the player's pushing their hips out, way before they start their downswing, and that's going to keep the face open. Lead wristed impact, do they, flex their wrist, which would be more of a Dustin Johnson type of player, or do they extend their wrist, which would be closer to what I would say a lot of amateur golfers do. Now, these 3 for me here, tempo, timing, and rhythm, are all kind of very similar, but slightly different. So tempo being with the actual timing of the sequence. And so when we're looking at tempo, it's, are they going more fast or are they going more slow? The next one being the timing itself, where, are they pausing at the top? Are they, making a short swing and driving through, that kind of stuff? Where rhythm is measured more so, are they swinging kind of soft like a Freddie Couples, or are they swinging more like a Bryson DeChambeau, where they're swinging really hard and aggressive at it? So those are the principles. Like I said, there's a ton of them out there to go over, and I would recommend everybody do it before they actually go and observe, because they'll have a better idea for what their teacher, their PGA pro, is doing, and it will make it a lot easier for as you give your lesson in the future moving forward. All right, so preferences, I just put a couple on here because there's, everything could be a preference when you're looking at the golf swing, depending on the player and your style, right? So a couple of big ones here that point out for me, outside takeaway. Do you like an outside takeaway? Why would you do an outside takeaway? That's a preference. So say if somebody has trouble turning, then maybe an outside takeaway might not be a good thing, right? Early wrist cock. Are we going to hinge the club a lot faster, or do you want to drag it back in more of a one-piece type of scenario? That depends, again, for what you were trying to accomplish with that particular player. Cup left wrist, again. So, a cup left wrist is going to help keep the face a little bit more open as you're going through impact. And that's going to, if your path is a little bit more moving left, that's going to help you hit more of that fade type of shot. So does anyone have any questions with this part? Or maybe we can go through a couple examples of how to look at, a golf swing scenario, and then we can match some laws, preferences, and principles. Anybody have any questions? Does anybody want to give it a try? White group. No, okay, well, I'll give an example then. So, we'll go back to the laws. We'll say there's a player who, keeps slicing, right? He's slicing, and that his club path, number 3, looks pretty good, but his face is more open. So he's starting the ball slightly to the right, and it's, curving a lot more to the right. So if we go down to the next one and we look, well, grip would be a good one. Grip, we're going to go with a stronger grip, which would be the preference at this point. Maybe stronger in the left hand, or grip more in the fingers. And that's going to help close the face up as you go through. And you could also relate that through number 6 as well, where, that's the actual timing of the release there. So, all right, I'll move on. If somebody has any questions about how to pair those together, then we can talk about it at the end. Short game. So this is kind of lesson 2, and there's a lot of different areas in here. Again, we could make a whole hour presentation on each of these sections. The old adage right now moving forward, right, is if you were teaching to just improve somebody's score, then I would be teaching a lot of short game lessons, because most people really are emotionally attached to a poor drive that goes out of bounds, and they feel like that is the biggest frustration or problem in their game, when they may make 3 putts around or 4 3-putts around, which could be easily solved with not only putting better, but chipping it closer to the hole. So we'll go through these here kind of quickly. Distance control, direction control. So some of the things we could look at for them for that particular part with distance control, maybe the loft of the putter at impact. Maybe they start to bend the wrist and the wrists are moving. Direction could also be how much club face rotation they have moving through impact. Right. So how do we want to reduce that? Well, do you want to reduce it with the grip going left hand low, or maybe do you want to get them a little closer to the ball so that that closeness to the ball will help reduce some of the face rotation. Green reading, I always tell people, you try not to only read your putt, but read the whole green, just in case the putt goes 10 feet by and it catches a ridge. I look for the outer line of the green and say, okay, where's the high point? Where is the putt? Where would a straight putt be breaking to from your ball to the hole? Those kinds of different things, right? Types of grass, different types of grass that we have out here. Whether you're more of a Poana or Bermuda, how does that affect the putt? Grip, like I said earlier, there's many different putter grips. We could look at going way back to Chris DeMarco with claw, or you could look at Jordan Spieth, who's left-hand low, or you could look at a Tiger who uses a more traditional putter grip still to this day even, right? Chipping's kind of an interesting category. Like I said before, there's no perfect way to do it. It's more what's going to be repeatable for that player. So I would say that the majority of my students are probably going to be chipping with anywhere from a gap wedge to a sand wedge, maybe even a pitching wedge or 9-iron. But I do have some students who are most comfortable with the 7-iron or even a lob wedge. And that's going to greatly affect the shot trajectory, right? So if we're teaching them one particular shot, we want them to understand that, hey, if you're using a 7-iron, then if you're going, if you have to carry a hill, then we have to account for how that ball's going to react off the hill. Same with pitching. Pitching, you may use a lower lofted wedge, or you may use a 9-iron or a lob wedge, just depending on the player you are. And you want to get your players understanding what that ball is going to do and how it's going to happen, so that they can best plan for the shots on the golf course. Now, as we're looking at the different types of sand, you might have thick sand, or you might have very minimal sand, like some of the courses in the area. If they're struggling to get sand in their bunkers, then you might offer the player a different type of bounce, whether that's high or low. And so for the people who may not know this already, if you're in a bunker with not a lot of sand, you might want a lower bounce option to kind of help dig in a little bit. Or if there's a ton of sand in there, you might want that higher bounce option. Okay, moving on. So when we're looking at this particular figure here, this is basically the 9 different ball flights that are that we can hit with a golf club. The easiest one to relate to would be that straight right down the middle. In that particular scenario, the club face is going to be where that ball starts. So that would be the line down here at the bottom, where with the other ones over here, the club face would be maybe a little bit more open or a little bit more closed. And then the club path is going to create the curvature. So in a perfect example on the right, this push hook, when the club face is open to the target over here, but the path would be more right than the club face, then that ball is going to start to curve to the left. Right? And we see a lot of golfers in general in that higher handicap group who are either going to do a push slice where their club face is open, but also the path is actually left of the club face there, or even a pull slice here where it starts to the left, so the club face is open or is closed over here, but the path is still more left than that face, which is going to make that ball curve a lot more to the right. If you guys have questions, definitely we can revisit this.
Hey, William.
Yes.
So, is it fair to say that the club face determines the initial path? So if I'm coming in straight, but my club face is open, path is going right. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so when we're looking at it, what we found is that now 90, I think it's close to 90, it's 88% of the starting direction of the golf ball will be determined where that club face is pointed. So that initial kind of first shot off is going to be affected mostly by the club face. And Tom, too, that really kind of accounts for what we're going to go into next briefly, which is where the ball is struck. So all of
Perfect.
these laws are really only true if you're hitting the ball in the center of the club face.
Which I don't do much. Okay.
Yes. So hopefully that answered your question. Perfect. So we'll continue on, guys. Influence with lie angle. So this would be for those fitters out there or aspiring fitters. You might have a guy who comes in. This happens, frequently with us, who, as you're interviewing the player, you ask them, "Hey, are you taking any golf lessons?" Because that could greatly affect the fitting, right? And you don't want to fit somebody for brand new golf clubs, have them spend a bunch of money, and then they say, "Oh, you know what? I took, 10 lessons with, my PGA pro, and now now my golf clubs are too weak, or my posture's a little bit better and my lie angle's off." So we really want to be asking those questions before in terms of a fitting. But just so you guys know, when you hit it relatively in the center, with a great lie, you'll see that the ball will actually start straight, which is what we ideally what we want. Down here on the left, the more the lie of the club goes upright, so that's going to feel like the toe is in the air, that's actually going to make the ball start the most left. Or anytime it gets more flat, that's where the toe is going to be down, and that's going to help the ball start to the right. So for instance, if you have a player who you're fitting, and when you're fitting him, he says, "No, I don't want to take any golf lessons, but I hit a little fade," then maybe you want to make that club a couple degrees upright to help kind of get that ball starting a little closer to the line, and that will help reduce some of his curvature, and that's an easy way to do that. So we'll talk about this briefly. This is just so you guys know, again, mostly you can understand about why it's so important that we need to hit the center of the face. A lot of guys who come in here and they'll say, "Gosh, I only want to work on my driver." And what they don't understand is that if I go back a couple of frames to this and say they want to hit that, push draw or push hook, they need to have a club face that's in the correct position. They need to have the club path that's in the correct position. And then not only that, they have to hit it in the center of the face. So they could be they could have a great club face position. They could have a great club path position. But if they're not hitting it in the center of the face, then it really is irrelevant to getting them to their goal. So bulge is going to be described as the curvature more horizontally on the club face, and roll would be vertical curvature there. So for those who may not know, a driver has more loft higher on the club face. The stated loft that's on the club is typically the loft in the center point, and then the club will have less loft on the bottom of the club. The bulge is going to affect curvature left or right. So down here, the more you strike the ball off a heel, again, you're having a relatively straight club path and a straight club face, that ball will actually curve more to the right. Where if you hit it on the heel, if you hit it on the toe, that's going to make the ball curve a lot more to the left at that point. If we're looking at, the other side here in terms of the loft, like I said earlier, that ball that struck on the bottom is actually going to launch a lot lower and have more spin, where that ball that struck higher on the face, that's actually going to launch a little higher and have less spin. So for those who remember the SLDR TaylorMade driver, that one we all had to, crank up in loft because it was so low spinning. So that was the high launch campaign that they put on at that time. So I put another face in here just so you could see. I'll give you a couple examples. Say if we hit it closer to this area on the face, which is kind of high in the toe, that ball strike over here is going to create a shot that starts a little higher, spins a little bit more to the left because it's closer to the toe. It's going to have less backspin. And that's what, oddly enough, the twist space is supposed to help offset. So if you hit it in the heel down here in the bottom, that's going to actually make the ball, launch a little lower, definitely have a lot more spin and curve more to the right. So generally, we're seeing golfers who hit it more, kind of in this low heel area, which could be a number of different factors and why that's happening, as opposed to that higher toe position, which may be a little bit more user-friendly in terms of hitting a driver. So this is where we're going to start talking more about the coaching portion of it. I really just kind of put a slide in here briefly to talk about cause and effect. If we change this, what will happen? So, I used an example the other day with one of our coaches. If you eat McDonald's for a year, then you'll probably end up gaining weight, right? So when we're looking at the golf swing, if I change my student's grip, is that going to close the face, right? Or if I get him more bent over, will he stay in better posture? So we want to be thinking about what is going to happen with the change that we're making. So basically now kind of want to go over the activities. I wanted to have some of the presentation focus more around the material, and then I wanted to help you guys kind of go through this if you have any questions. This was by far probably the easiest for me, and my favorite activity to do was assessing your own golf equipment. So of course, you're going to need your golf clubs. You will need a launch monitor for this activity. And guys, I mean, if you want to go into a golf tech, you can always reach out to me, or I can put you in touch with golf techs in your area. We will definitely be happy to help you with this and can help you read the data if it's not something that you're really savvy with. A loft lie machine, so you can measure the lie angle of your golf clubs, the loft of your golf clubs. A swing weight scale, so that's going to measure how the club is swinging. You're going to also need a standard scale, which I don't have, but that will take the total weight of the golf club. Some swing weight scales actually have that built in, which is a nice feature as well. And then a club length measuring device. So when we're looking at activity 1, I'll go back to that screen here. This is basically mine. I took off some of the data so you guys didn't see, all of it, but basically we're looking for what club type you have, what's the manufacturer, what size grip you have, the length of the club, flex of the club, what the shaft weight is, what the swing weight is, the total weight is, lie angle, and you'll see as we go through, really the numbers that you're going to get from the launch monitor are as we go down. So face angle over here, face angle is going to tell us how open or closed that face is at impact. Now for me, I put them as a positive. Sometimes if you put them as a negative, that will tell the person reading the data table that that ball started more left. But for us with our launch monitor, it will either say left or right. Ball speed is going to be measuring how fast the ball is moving. Launch angle is the ball launching high or low. The spin rate is going to measure how many RPMs that ball is spinning. And PTR is power transfer ratio, which is also the same as smash factor. So if when you guys are doing these activities, if they have a smash factor on there, that's basically the number that you're going to take down, and then carry distance. So going back to this this graph here, this is going to show us kind of all those different factors where we have club head speed. That's what it will look like on most launch monitors. Ball speed, how fast the ball is moving. how far the ball's carrying in the air. You know, most of these are basically everything that you'll see on the chart. And again, if you guys have any questions, you can ask me. So the next couple slides, which will pretty much end the presentation, are going to talk about activities 2, 3, and 4, which are observing, taking a lesson, and completing a lesson. So just some things I'm sure you guys all know, but I wanted to, put them on here. Make sure that you show up early. I mean, when you're observing a lesson, and you need to take down information for your activity, that student might not want to use some of his lesson time that he's paying for to do that. So if you can communicate that with the teacher that you're going to observe, that might help ease that process for you. Of course, have your ringer off. Anytime you keep getting phone calls during a lesson, I know my students, they always feel really bad when they have it on me. It's not a big deal for me, but I always make sure that mine is off. Make sure that you be polite when you're teaching. I mean, golf is already hard enough. And be polite in the, as you're observing a lesson or taking a lesson. We want to try and help people play better golf as much as we can. Have your camera ready to go. So we'll talk about cameras also too a little further on, where we're just looking for an easy way. I know that a couple of people, when I went to level 1, their camera angles were off very poorly, so their portfolio got sent back. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen to any of you guys. And of course, lastly on this list here, don't be a distraction. I'm really bad for moving around and walking around, so I have to be very cognizant of not doing that as you're observing lessons. This is a quick little screenshot of what I submitted, and looking at this now as I put it back into my as I took it from my level 1 portfolio, it definitely could have been filled out a little bit more. I mean, other than the generic information at the top, I could have talked about previous lessons. Those are all things that you want to have an idea, with the golfer that's in front of you. That will be information that can help you understand why he's in front of you. This is basically a quick little screenshot of the information that they're looking for, either as you observe, as you take, or as you complete, as you give a lesson. When you're submitting this, it's very important that you fill all of the boxes out. They want all of the boxes out. So, with this student in particular, I talked in depth about how they were setting up, as you can see on the left. But really, the coach that I was observing didn't really adjust anything other than the grip. He made the grip a little bit stronger. So here's a quick little snapshot of bad camera positions. You'll see how the camera is slightly to the left of the player here on the left side. That's going to make it so that it would look like, as he brings the club back, maybe it's a little bit more inside. It'll definitely look like it gets steeper. On the right, you'll see over here, as he would follow through, you won't see any of his follow through golf swing, right? So we want to make sure those are centered up quite well. And a good general reference point as we're looking at these, posture on the left, you'll see how kind of like where the butt of the club is, or the hands in the center of the camera. That's kind of an easy spot to pick up a good golf swing as you're capturing video. And with the swing on the picture on the right, you'll see his hands kind of just over the golf ball, and that position is very centered in the camera as well. So basically, just some tips to help you guys. You guys are worried about teaching somebody. I had to teach my wife, who has never played golf before in her life, and that was an interesting experience for my level 1 portfolio, I'll tell you. But really, when they're there, when they're there, you want to find out why they're there. Have they taken lessons before? Is it a slice that's bothering them? You want to make sure you keep it really simple. Work on one thing, right? Golf is already hard enough, so make the lesson very easy for them to understand. And also, too, you want to make sure they understand why you're making those changes. We're going to strengthen your grip on that top hand, and that's going to help you close the face better. So once they know that, that will help them make those changes a little bit easier. This is an important one. Once you've decided on what you're going to do within a lesson, make sure you stay the course for the entire lesson, because there's nothing worse than saying, okay, today we're going to work on your posture. Okay, now we're actually going to change your grip a little bit. Okay, now we're actually going to work on your footwork as you go through impact. That would be a lesson that would be very challenging for the student to absorb, right? There's so many different things. Whether I'm teaching indoors or outdoors, I try and focus on one pre-swing area and one in-swing, no more than that. Like I said earlier, golf is hard, so make sure you're encouraging the student who's in front of you. Give them very clear notes and be clear on how to practice. All right, guys, so that's basically the last slide of that. Looks like I'm just going to come in under the time. One thing I wanted to put up here, for those of you who have not passed your PAT yet, I know I didn't get to ask you guys anything about that, but Golf Tech does offer a free game plan 1225, which will vary in price by location. But for anybody who's trying to pass their PAT, that is free. You would get 25 lessons. You'll get a year's worth of practice and the club fitting too. And I'm sure that whatever center you go to, they may be able to help discount your golf clubs because you're in the industry. If any of you guys want to take advantage of that, you can definitely contact me, or I can put you in touch with the closest Golf Tech in your location. And then lastly, any questions? Yes. Quiet.
Yeah, William.
Yes.
Hey, love the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I want to ask Lance and Mason and James, do you guys have any questions?
No.
I have a kind of a random question going back when you were talking about fittings.
Yes.
You have a difficult time when you're fitting someone, not giving them advice and swing changes and tips, knowing that their swing is
Sure.
Knowing that they have issues with their swing and they're getting fit, and that set's gonna eventually
Yeah, it could change, right? So I would say for me, I've developed the ability to kind of go into full fitting mode because I teach and I fit too. I try to keep the two different things separate. And as a fitter, you could have a guy who's going to fit you for however you swing that day, which is not really necessarily a bad thing, because that's what their job is to fit you. But I feel like you can make better educated choices if you ask the right questions along the road, right? So for instance, say if you feel like they're kind of in between a stiff or a regular, and you say, hey, are you taking lessons? And they say, yeah, I go to this person once a week. Well, then maybe you do want to put him in the stiff flex, because hopefully he's going to get a little faster, and that will help his game a little bit more, right? So I try and do, rather than just say, hey, maybe you should change your grip so you can see better results, I try and plan for better results by just asking the questions that I feel like are going to really help or give me the information to get them there.
Awesome. Tom Son, are you on? Would you like to?
Awesome. Thank you, William. Thank you.
No, this is Tom. Hey, William, how are you?
Good, Tom. How are you?
I know we've had our mentorship experiences in the past, and
Yes.
it's awesome to see making the progress and being
Yes.
part of the LaunchPad program. Today's presentation was very, very detailed and helpful. And
Sure.
I'm just happy that you're part of this LaunchPad. So thank you for doing it.
Of course. Yeah, I know. I'm happy to help. I mean, it was great. It was great to be introduced to the mentorship program. And, here I am. I'm not quite as far along, it's kind of stuck in level 2 a little bit, but we should clear that up shortly and I'll be moving on. Hopefully getting done by, the middle of next year would be great.
Yeah, let's not use the word stuck. I know you're gonna make progress and
Yes.
get level 2 done and eventually level 3 and be a PGM member soon. So please reach out to me if you need any more assistance going forward.
Sure. Of course.
Well, William, on behalf of the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA, thank you so much for dedicating your time and expertise and presenting this afternoon on the LaunchPad. For all of you that are viewing this LaunchPad through the drop-down on the Education tab on the SCPGA website, this is the conclusion of the fall 2022 LaunchPad series. We've been doing this with thanks to Colonel Tom Parker and Tom Sun through his mentorship committee, bringing in presenters to take us through the level 1 books each week over a 8-week period. We've done this now, I think 4 sessions. This is the conclusion of our 4th session. So they're a wonderful resource and a great way for associates to network with other associates and have that resource available to you on the SCPGA website under the Education dropdown. On behalf of the Education Committee, Colonel Tom, William, Tom Sun, thank you, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.